Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio with Tom and LFE. We are recording this on October 16th of 2015. It'll be 16 before we know it.
Yeah.
Man, you know, things have been pretty interesting here. This last week, I'm starting to take note. You know, I get these tones. I get these tones in my ear, right?
The high-pitched frequencies.
The high-pitched frequencies. Sometimes they're right ear, sometimes they're left ear.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I focus in on it, I can always hear a tone if I, really listen for it.
Yeah.
But sometimes they come through, and it's just like screaming. It's like, here I am, I'm the big tone, something's going on.
Listen to me.
And so I've started trying to really pay attention to what's going on, what am I sensing. You know, I open up my energetic senses and see if I can sense something energetically happening. There was, and this is even more poignant for me right now, even after, we had a few shows there where we talked about this Wave X thing, and it was brought up in the conversations, and energy coming into the planet from, the cosmic places, right? These energies, these I see them as a physical form of energy we're being bombarded with.
Some people said gamma rays.
Right.
Photon belt,
So
energy.
Yeah. So, anyways, I really started paying attention to when those tones really go off in my head, and try to pay attention, note it down so that I can keep an eye on what happened in the world on those days, and see if there's any correlations. See if there's anything that ties this stuff together. Right now, I had 2 days in a row, October 12th and 13th, where it was the tone was really loud, and then yesterday, which was October 15th, I had about a 2-hour period. Somewhere between it was like 3 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
So was this like a constant tone you were hearing, or was it off and on?
It was kind of a it was almost like a wave. So
fade
in, fade out. But there were points there, especially on the 12th, where it ramped up to a really high tone, and it stayed there for, hours. It stayed there for hours with no fluctuation.
Yeah. So just curious, did your dog happen to notice anything? Did you notice anything with your dog?
I didn't pay any attention, but that's a good one. Maybe I'll look at that.
Yeah.
Next one that comes through, I'll see if he's reacting differently or
acting
doing
a little funny, something,
Yeah, they're definitely sensitive to sound a lot keener than we are.
Yeah.
But that was pretty interesting, and I don't know. We'll I'll keep a journal on it, and we'll see if anything plays out. See if I note any patterns or any relationships at all to the way I'm sensing it. Energetically, I also felt, for those 2 days, and this could just be the fact that I was more aware and I was more focused, and I was focusing on looking for, my senses were open consciously So it could be I'm sure it would be a combination of different factors that would make my perceptions change. But I definitely felt like there was an energy of some form that had shifting potential. So, when I say that, I'm talking about something that has a potential to activate or open something within the human physiology for access into other areas that had before been blocked to us.
Yeah, so it's like so you're kind of thinking it could be a key.
Could be, yes.
Yeah.
And these different, I know for a fact that once we cross the ecliptic of the galaxy, the galactic ecliptic, we're moving from one polarity into another polarity. The whole galaxy is a giant dynamo. It's a giant positive and negative electromagnetic thing. Yes. So, when you're shifting from one polarity into another polarity, and us being electromagnetic beings, it's going to have an effect on us. Things that when we were in the other polarity were impossible to accomplish. Now that we're in this other polarity, those things are going to start to open up and start to unfold for us.
Yeah, and it makes you kind of wonder, what's happening on the microscopic level, what's happening on the molecular level, the atomic level,
Do we have that 12-strand DNA? Is that, multiple, more than 2-strand, a reality? Is it something that can be activated by this different energy?
Yeah.
A lot of big questions out there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can go off on that thing.
I know, me too.
Yeah.
We'll talk to our guests tonight about some of this stuff too.
Yeah.
So you had some stuff in the world that you wanted to touch on there.
Yeah, real quick. So I was just looking on some different news sources, and I seen that they're planning over in the UK to put a energy power plant out in the ocean that is based off the tide movements. And so when the tide goes up, they're thinking about building this like 6-mile long wall to make a artificial lagoon to fill up with water when the tides roll in and then to empty out. And with the filling and the emptying of that 6-mile long wall, it would spin the turbines.
Right.
And they're thinking this thing would cost about $1 billion to make and power 155,000 homes and cut out oil and reduce the carbon footprint and everything else. Just another idea out there that people are really starting to take hold of and investing money into and getting the ball rolling on this.
We've had hydroelectric forever. That's been our primary power source for electricity from day one. Even now even the nuclear plants there run by steam, right? It's ultimate. Basically, it's still a hydroelectric format.
It's just a different way of harnessing it.
Right. We've tapped into we've done the rivers and the lakes and created a lot of lakes with our dams and we've got this fixation on the rivers, the flowing water in the rivers. But what an untapped resource the oceans are. The power within the tides. That's a lot of real estate being moved every 12 hours.
It's a lot of energy.
It's definitely a technology that we really should be tapping into, and I think that takes care of all the energy problems for anybody that's close to the coastline anyway.
Yeah, and I don't know what the downsides are for the environment and wildlife, but one of the things this news article was talking about was that they're going to use the wall to help grow more oysters and clams and shit like that to harvest for a seafood, So
it could be a controlled lagoon area.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, if it's done right, I'm just saying that, I'm just so happy that there's more and more of these people that are actually investing money and starting the plans and getting ready to start construction on these projects. Sustainability projects, yeah. So it's getting there. We just got to keep focusing in on it. And
I'm like you, LP. I'm very happy to see society as a whole really start to pay attention to sustainable everything.
Yeah.
We're looking at how to do things right and make it to where it's not, damaging our environment as much. So it's good stuff. That's all part of that 100th monkey wave, right?
Yep, it's all part of it.
Yeah, wave X. All right, so on with the show. We have got a returning guest for you tonight, and this is in his words. My name is Darryl E Berry Jr. I've had a long-time interest in spiritual growth. As a kid, I began to have vague indications with foreign lands and cultures which I recognized as past life connections and became enamored with the idea of breaking the cycle of birth and death. Eventually, I came across the idea of ascending or leaving the cycle by taking my physical body into different dimensions. Through researching ascension, I came across a book about ascending masters who visited a Gary Reynard and imparted to him knowledge about truly breaking the cycle of birth and death and what true spiritual growth is. This led me to study the practice of A Course in Miracles, a purely non-dualistic thought system teaching personal metamorphosis into Christ by a process of advanced forgiveness, which, by the way, I still have a lot to work to do. Through this practice and way of thinking, I've had several mystical experiences, including an experience of the universe disappearing and existing as a universal mind, an experience of being visited by Yeshua, and as well as experiences of heightened state of peace and a general and ongoing lessening of stress, fear, anger, pain. One of the realizations gathered from such practice is the fact that the world is what we make it, the world being quite literally a projection of the mind. Thus, whatever we see wrong with the world inevitably reflects some aspect of guilt or pain in our own minds. I'll detail this thought system and practice in a book entitled Classes on the Course in Miracles. Is that what you're working on now, by the way?
Yes, it is. It should be out early next year.
Oh, awesome. Well, I'm going to cut this bio short, guys. It's actually, I'm only about halfway through. We got Darryl Berry Jr. back with us tonight, and if you have been listening to the 100th Monkey Radio for any length of time, you are familiar with Darryl, and you know he's one of our favorites here. We can talk to Darryl on any topic, and he has, he's a kindred soul there as far as that's concerned, and dipping his toes into many waters. So welcome back to the 100th Monkey Radio, Darryl.
Yay!
Awesome. I'm glad to be back. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, yeah. I had to stop there when talking about the book Classes on A Course in Miracles. That sounds dynamic. I mean,
yes, because I've been teaching the course off and on for a few years, and I started recording the classes last year or so. 12 of the classes that I had, I'm going to put them, at least I had them transcribed, and I'll put them in book form, and together it gives a pretty good nutshell explanation of pure non-dualism and that perspective of thought. So, I'm not sure how popular it'll be in a sense, because the level of thought of pure non-dualism actually carries a lot of fear. The fear of losing our individuality. So, we'll see how it goes. There's people like Kenneth Wapnick and Gary Renard who managed to get pretty popular. So that's one reason why I'm deciding to put the book out, because, maybe I can get a wider audience and see if with a wider audience a lot of people will be interested in it. But if not, of course, I'll just keep doing my OB thing and everything as I will anyway. It's pretty interesting. And that subject, in my experience, really gets to the heart of the purpose of life. I mean, as we're living in the body, we have to do something.
Right.
So we, work our drives, and we do our out-of-body experiences, and we dabble in energy and all kinds of things like that. But when you get into the true heart of what it means to live life to the fullest, it's really spiritual growth. It's really spiritual development. And the unique thing about that form of spiritual development, which is the Course in Miracles, is that you could apply it as a backdrop to a normal life, which means you can do everything you normally do. You know, you can go to work, you can get married, you can play in a band, you can play video games, you can write books, you can teach classes, you can do whatever you normally do. But what you learn to do is develop a backdrop where you develop a certain perspective, a certain way that you interpret the world, and this perspective literally lifts you beyond the world itself. It literally starts to give you a perspective in a sense that's even beyond perspective, because, you know, whatever it is that we find in the world, and what the Course does, it basically delineates everything, every single endeavor that we have in the world into 4 different categories. It's either power, pleasure, fame, or wealth. And every single thing that we do in the world that we pursue in order to bring us happiness or to alleviate pain or stress on the worldly level, it always falls into one of those categories or some combination of those categories. And you know, what it teaches you to do is first of all to recognize that all of those categories are going to fail at some point eventually, which we've all experienced in our lives over and over. And it teaches you an alternative to that, which is really recognizing that your existence and your being is not dependent upon anything that happens in the world of form at all. Your being actually flows from something that's totally beyond the world of form. And of course, that's where the fear comes in, because, well, obviously I'm in the world of form. I experience myself in the world of form. But ultimately, all of the pain that we have in our existence is a result or an effect of identifying with the world of form, or even consciousness, which is what's within the world of form. So, you know, Course in Miracles basically brings it totally beyond all of that, and you know, everything again in the world of form has to have some kind of form. So it's put into a package that can seem sort of Christian, because it uses a lot of sort of Christian terminology, and it also uses a lot of psychological terminology, being that the lady who scribed it was a psychologist, but it actually gets to the heart of very universal principles that you can find in the Vedanta and things like that, and even in the Bible and things like that. You know, it's dotted throughout a lot of places. But, you know, as the Bayou was saying, you know, from a young age, I was interested in the idea of breaking the cycle of birth and death and the true meaning of life, and reaching the highest level of development, the highest level of spiritual attainment possible. And in all my studies, A Course in Miracles really gets to the heart. You know, apart from the language that it comes in, it really gets to the heart of the highest achievement that you can possibly attain, and the highest purpose you can possibly devote yourself to.
Yeah.
So would you say that, you know, it's our own individuality that's our biggest roadblock? And, you know, when I speak about individuality, is it the same individuality, like, you know, I need to be different than you, or I need to be better than you?
The ego mind.
Yeah, as opposed to the individuality that, that can realize that we're all connected, and we're all very, very similar. We're, you know, everybody says we're all the same, but, you know, there's minor differences, but basically that's what I'm getting at. It's
a very interesting question, and this is what needs to be understood. What we call individuality, it is an expression or projection of a mind that's hell bent on being separate. So in a sense, consciousness itself is a manifestation of the investment in being separate and being distinct. Now, the fact is, there is only one mind projecting the universe. So the consciousness can experience a sense of oneness and community, and like what Buddha got into, that one mind is projecting everything. But the fact is, whenever you have consciousness, it itself is an expression of the investment in being separate and being distinct. And the reason why we have this world in multiplicity is because that one mind projected out that thought of separation that it was invested in. So to a certain extent, there's no way that you can have consciousness and not have an investment in separation and being separate. The saving grace that allows us to get out of this is the fact that within that one mind, that is hell bent on separation, within that one mind there's a memory of what was before separation, a reflection of the state that we had prior to that, and it is the coming to within our being of that memory is what allows us to really have a true experience of oneness. Ultimately, the sort of just like how we talk about physical things and it's metaphysical in relation to secular things like say again?
We lost you for a second there.
Okay. Just like how you have like we talk about metaphysical things and psychic things and this sort of metaphysical or spiritual relative to like football games and things like that. Well, true oneness makes the oneness that we normally think of it to be secular. I mean that's the distinction, the degree of difference between what we think of as oneness and what true oneness really means. And true oneness, there is no consciousness at all. Consciousness itself is a divisive mechanism. And one of the ways it manifests as we start to become more aware of our true state of oneness is to interpret the world from a more unified perspective. Because there's several ways to look at separation in such a way that we interpret it as oneness. So, for instance, even in the physical world, my skin might be darker, your skin might be light, but we're still human beings. But yet we're still distinct human beings. Even though you can become aware of that level of mind that's projecting everything, it's still projecting a world of duality. But you can still become aware of being the mind that's doing that. But the next step is for that one mind to decide against itself and let go of even being consciousness at all. And so it actually goes beyond that. So becoming aware of sort of the universal oneness is a very, very important step, and it's a necessary step along the way. But A Course in Miracles takes it a step forward and recognizes that even that is still a large and distinct step away from absolute oneness and pure oneness. It's a oneness within which there is no distinction at all. It's a oneness within which there's not even a consciousness to discern that there's a oneness that is a part of. Because even that awareness itself is a distinction and signifies that there's still a separation within it.
That's that state of unity with the universe, that euphoria that is reached in those peak moments of connection with the universe.
No, even beyond that. So that connection with the universe would be that awareness of the one mind that's projecting everything. But that still is a step away from absolute oneness. And people like Buddha popularized that level of oneness. And I've had a brief experience of that level of oneness, like it was saying in the bio. But it's still a step removed from absolute oneness. It still is just a certain perspective of separation. Ironically, it's a sort of bird's eye view of separation rather than being beyond separation entirely and back to a state of pure oneness. So it's a very definite and significant step along the way. But to stop there would still be a step below, a step short from absolute oneness. And that's why a lot of people think that that was his final lifetime, but that wasn't his final lifetime. He had to come back again to take a step even beyond that. And that's one of the like Buddhism is definitely a very sophisticated religion. But those who see that as the pinnacle actually put themselves under a plateau and don't step farther. So it is a significant step. But the oneness that A Course in Miracles is talking about goes even beyond that step, even beyond universal oneness, which is still within the realm of division, within the realm of separation.
So what aspect of go or working towards that do you think is the primary source of the fear people experience as they start to delve into it?
Just not wanting to lose your individuality. Just not wanting to lose, because if you look at the way, even the way that we structure our world, distinction is applauded. Like you when you have distinction, when you perform your duty with distinction, that's a good thing. So we have this dogged individuality, this dogged individualism, where that's how integrated it is with our being. So it's just the idea of that mind that believed that it actually separated from oneness. The only gift it can give for the maintenance of that crazy idea is its existence itself. So when it projected that idea out, thus we have a whole bunch of little seeming cells running around that seems to be an individual self. It also has that same inbuilt fear of losing individuality. And that's why people get so upset when you pronounce their name wrong, or when you don't acknowledge them, when you don't recognize them as a person. Is all based upon that fundamental drive to maintain our individuality, our individual existence. And that's the reason why we hate. Ironically, that's the reason why we have pain and frustration and judgment, because the way it plays out, the pain in the world actually acts as a defense mechanism to keep our individuality intact. Because the way the course describes the myth of our existence, being that there is absolutely oneness, and that's the only thing there really is. This entire universe is a dream. It's not real, which means that the mind is projecting it is not real. It's an illusory mind that believes that it's separate when it's actually not, and there's no intellectual answer that's going to satisfy how can we be here talking about something that when we don't exist at all. But when you understand it and you look at the world, you can see how the dynamic plays out, and you can. But we'll get to that. But
so how do you
go ahead.
So how do you see individuality and free will interlaced?
Well, I mean, to a large extent, and I can't even say to a large extent, ultimately there's no such thing as free will. From that level, all we're doing is acting out like a robot, the decisions of this one mind, which is why, things like the X-wave, you're talking about the X-wave earlier, which is why those things have effect. Those things have effect not because they really have effect. They actually have effect because every single universal phenomenon that has an effect on any individual is actually the reflection or the effect of a decision that the universal mind is making. That's just how it plays itself out. That's why things like horoscopes and things like that have some effect. That's not the exact word. Like what is it called? Cosmology, or what's the word for stars have an effect on things? I don't remember the exact word for it.
Cosmology sounds right.
Cosmology. There you go. That's why cosmology has an effect, because the way it plays itself out, the stars in the universe actually emit, of course, energy. They emit chi, and the chi energy that comes from the sun actually interacts with the human through our chi field, and it has an effect upon our thoughts, has an effect upon what we do. And basically everything that we do and everything that we think is a result of these fields, which comes from the thought that comes from the mind. So in our individual life, we seem in our experience to be individual. But if you start to understand the fundamental ideas upon which consciousness is based, which is separation, division, attack, and so on and so forth, and then you look at people's lives, look at your own life, look at the way governments run, you can see how everything plays out in a very predetermined way. Things that we do, it's so textbook. It's like cookie cutter. As individual as people think they are. If you look at people's responses to things, people respond so, and I get a very effective way to observe it, because as you know, I work as a bill collector, so I speak of people, on a regular basis in a certain situation, and I can see how, I can speak to I don't know how many thousands of people over the years, and I can see the same reactions and the same. It's just people think they're so individual, but they're not. And when you start to understand how the way we think, which is the way this mind is structured, and you just start to look at your life, it's just amazing. I mean, you're left speechless to see how pretty much of a robot we've been.
Well, yeah,
the thing is that.
Oh, I was gonna say I can definitely see that, because I mean in our media, our media tells us what's popular, how to wear your hair, what to dress, what to drive, what kind of house to live in, and a large majority of people follow that, and put that as their standard living. They have to have it this way. But at the same time, they think they're individual because their house has stairs and your house doesn't. So my house is I'm a little more individual in that way. Or I drive a car that has rims on it and you don't, so I'm a little more individual that way. So I mean I see what you're saying. How I mean it is cookie cutter. Like it's almost it is predictable. Basically.
That's right, exactly. Very good point, and that's why these marketing people and investment people, they find trends and they invest, and it's like looking at a herd of migrating animals. But the thing about it is, even the people who do that, they're still predictable as well. They're still a part of the same dynamic, so no one escapes it. The people who do the media, they're a part of the same people who there's a dynamic where people want to be in control. So some people are in control because we're the marketing people who see the trends and we put out the stuff out, and look at us steering these people everywhere. Where they're a part of the same steering mechanism, which correlates with the people who seemingly want to be steered. So everyone falls into this dynamic. No one escapes it. It's really a universal thing. And when you start to become conscious of this, you can start to really take hold of your thinking processes, which really has to do with changing from the investment and separation to the true investment in oneness, which has to do, ironically, with being able to look very closely at the way we live our lives, and you could address it at this level. So, if there's one nutshell way to describe the cookie-cutter fashion that everyone lives their lives, you can say almost everyone, because there's of course a few exceptions, but almost everyone lives their lives based upon judgment. Judgment. Whether you're judging in anger at the person who cut you off on the road, or you're judging in anger at the person who you're living with, whether you're angry at the country over there and you want to raid and invade them, whether you're jealous of this person who has more or less than you, whether you're judging these people as sheep, because I'm the marketing person and I make them buy what they want, what I want them to buy. Whatever degree you do it at is judgment. It's judgment and seeing someone as separate, seeing someone that I can especially hate, or seeing someone that I can especially love, seeing someone that I could especially control, which is the power aspect we was talking about earlier: power, pleasure, fame, and wealth. Someone who I can get something from. It's always judgment. So
yeah, well, I mean, even positive judgments, or not so much, or judging somebody because they pissed you off, or because they dress funny, but judging somebody, you see a good-looking female, and you're
like that. That's still a judgment.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. And you'll see that everywhere. That's one thing you will see everywhere. But when you go into people like the Vedanta, for instance, it says when pleasure and pain are the same, non-judgment, lack of distinction, because from the perspective of truth, no matter what it is in the world, it's illusion. It's illusory. So everything is absolutely equal in its illusory nature. And when you start to be willing to accept that perspective, then you start to become accessible to a perspective beyond the world entirely, and that's when you start to get to the point of being able to awaken. So it's a very, very fundamental and very universal way of addressing things, which again we could look at from our regular ground, on the ground perspective. So I mean, just every day you learn to look at your life and look at your hatreds and your judgments and start to recognize that it really all has to do with the pain I feel within myself because my own separation, because separation is painful.
Yeah.
Which is why, in some sense, everybody's trying to get back to oneness, no matter which way you do it, whether you're trying to get to universal oneness or whether you're trying to get to oneness with this body, who's going to make you feel better when you get with this person, whether you're trying to unite yourself with wealth, when I get enough money. Everyone's trying to find something to make themselves feel. What's that?
I said, yeah, it seems, everybody's trying to find something to fill that void, and it's not anything that you can't, it's nothing tangible that can fill that void, because that's not a tangible void to be filled, It's,
right.
it's something that, and it's some, you can't seek that from anybody else. What I was going to ask you though was, so free will, and then we have the universal mind, and then we have the one mind, right? So,
well, I mean, the universal mind is the one mind. The one mind is projecting everything.
Yeah. So everything that we're doing now, we have no free will over in the sense of being in these physical bodies and with our present state of consciousness in the physical bodies, that we don't have free will. But I know a lot of people have problems with that, but we still have free will, and we still have individuality.
The illusion of...
We'll see if we are that universal mind. We're all just fractals of that universal mind. At some point, there is free will for us to to choose to fractalize ourselves into all these reflections and live out as quote unquote individual whatevers.
But that's
right?
supposing that the universal mind changes its mind.
Yeah. Yeah, but at one sense it had to make a decision to come to fractal itself and create all the reality around us.
That's right. I see what you're saying. I mean, in that sense, I mean, you can say we have individuality because we have our experience of individuality, and then that experience is true. It's just we don't realize that. It's kind of like what's a good example? It's like if you take a child, and I remember back in the day when used to be playing video games, and you have a little, let's say you're watching your little nephew, he wants to play too. So what do you do? You give him a controller, and it's not connected, right?
Yeah.
And he's having the ball, he's pressing the buttons, he's looking at the screen, he thinks he's doing something, but the controller he's using is not really working. So it's something like that. We have a controller, we're pressing the buttons, but we don't realize that what's really going on is being directed from a higher level, really. So that's not to say that we need to divorce ourselves from our experience of having the controller, because again, using that same analogy, if you take that controller from the child and say you're not really playing, he's going to start crying. You don't want that, so you let him hold the controller. So in that sense, we do need to grab onto our experience of being a separate, conscious individual that makes our own decisions, and we do need to, from this level, actively choose to change our mind. But the fact is, even that is still an effect of a choice of that universal mind. So, in a sense, yes, we have our individuality because it's our experience, but like Tom was saying, it's still an illusory experience. So both of you are right. It actually both of you are right. It's not a this or that thing. Yeah. It's a this and that. It's a paradox.
Yeah.
So, but what happens is, go ahead.
I was just saying. So how I kind of see it is that when we collapse all of these so-called individualities back into the universal mind, right? And when you're at that point, when all these individualities are collapsed, and you're at that one point, or before it expanded, at that one point, is that not individuality? For that.
Well, in other words, the seeming separation is a lie, and that's where it comes from, the aspect that we don't really have free will. In other words, all there still is that one mind.
Yeah, it's
so
just,
there's no need
grander. It's just a grander way of looking at it. I mean, we're just small reflections of that here, but No, I
mean from the perspective, looking from within the illusion. We could speak about separate beings, but from the perspective of that mind, all there is still that one mind.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so there's no need for anything to sort of collapse or combine into that one mind. All there is and all there ever was is universally is that one mind. And really, from that perspective, everything only happened in an instant. The entire seeming universe happened in one instant. It was an illusion of mind that. Exactly. So from that perspective, there's no collapsing into it. It's just one instant where this illusory mind had the idea of wanting to be separate, and in that same instance, the insanity of the thought dawned upon it, and that thought ended just that quickly. But because this mind is so massive, the way that one instant of thought plays itself out is of a projection of millions and trillions and quadrillions of individual beings across gazillions of galaxies, across gazillions of multiverses all throughout different times, and then you have non-physical dimensions and physical beings and non-physical beings. It all plays out in a very convoluted way, and we all seem to have our individuality, and we're hating each other and loving each other and trying to get back. It's a whole confusing and conglomerated thing, but still it's all just that same instant of time with that one mind that didn't really even exist in the first place.
Right.
So,
right. Now that everybody's brain is jello out there listening.
No, that was awesome. That was a great explanation of it.
It was actually. But it's pretty, that's some really deep and really heavy stuff for people to wrap their minds around. I mean, from this third dimensional perspective, I got the concept, and I've actually taken that one to meditation more than once. That one mind, that universal, the prime core source thing that I've probed into, and I agree with you 100% on all of this, Darryl. But it is a very it's a tall mountain to climb.
Yeah, it's hard to make your words match my words, match Tom's words, and make sense in the same way. But I think that we're all saying the same thing, just in different words. It's that damn English language.
Yeah.
Yeah, words are limits. But the good thing is, though, progress is not dependent upon fully understanding that consciously, because really in a sense you can't understand it consciously because you're an individual. You can't understand it in that way. It's not like an intellectual exercise. Having some kind of awareness of it as a backdrop to your application is important, but the way you really understand it is by applying whatever you do understand to your life, and the experience will come of itself. So like A Course in Miracles says that a universal theology is impossible. In other words, there's no need for all three of our words to match. That would be impossible anyway, just like we have all good different kind of religions and all this kind of stuff. But it says a universal experience is not only possible but necessary, which is how when you find the most advanced people of any different religions, they'll be saying pretty much the same thing in content. Not even pretty much the same thing, the exact thing in content. Non-judgment, peace, love, like Mother Teresa, Yeshua, and so on and so forth. So, Ramana Maharshi and so on and so forth. All of these very spiritual beings, whatever they word it, you can just tell that they are purely, perfectly non-judgmental presence. They don't judge anyone. They recognize that everyone is equally worthy of love, no matter what they have done or not done, and that transcends whatever theology you have. And the way that you come to this awareness on the ground is by applying what the Course calls forgiveness, by simply recognizing, even just forgetting all of the metaphysical stuff initially, but it's recognizing that whatever this person does in my life, when you did whatever and I'm angry at you, my anger has nothing to do with you. Right. It's really my own anger within myself at my investment in being separate. And that's where all pain comes from. And that's, of course, a very nutshell way of describing it. But in a sense, what you do is you learn to withdraw your projections in the world, because, being that this universe is a projection of the one mind that projected the world to escape guilt. That's why every single seeming fragment does the same thing. We project to escape guilt. So we project, which means we're angry, we're judgmental, to defend against the fact that we believe we're guilty. so we can try to see our guilt in someone else and escape from it. But of course, that doesn't work. Oftentimes, we feel guilty when we dump on somebody, or even if we've successfully dumped on the person, we feel better, well, we got to attack someone else the next day. That's why you have people that they can't wait to become someone's boss, so they can dump on them, and they could be mean with them and ride them with the whip, and or people become police officers or parents or whatever, people who get in any kind of situation where they can seem to be an authority over somebody else, and they abuse that authority in a sense to escape the fact that they feel so little in their experience of being separate and distinct from oneness. So what we're taught to do is, in a way, this investment in separation and this unconscious guilt plays itself out in our world, rather than accepting the lie that the pain is really coming from what you did or didn't do, rather than accepting the lie that my upset is because of what you did or didn't do, because of my emptiness is because of what I don't have, or because of what I've lost, or whatever form it takes. We start to repeatedly reinterpret that and bring it back to the mind, and to the mind's choice for being separate, and the fact that we can make a different decision for it. And what happens is, the more you start to do that, you start to have experiences. I mean, just doing that in itself is an experience, because you start to see your own knee-jerk reactions to hate and to attack and to see differences. And you can see how even when you decide, I'm not going to judge today, before you realize it, like you just judge, you attack. We have an investment in attacking and seeing people as judgmental and different and separate, to keep this guilt in play, but try to see it in someone else to protect our individuality. And again, once you start to see the dynamic, you see it in everyone. You see it in your spouse. You see it in your friends. You see it in your employers. You see it in your employees. And you see it in sports teams and governments, and you see it everywhere. And you start to see how sane everything is, because everything is a part of that one mind. So, it's not really an intellectual exercise. You have to, of course, initially address it intellectually, but that would only get you so far. Once you start actually applying it, the experience itself will blow everything else out the water. When you start to have experiences of being a universal mind, it's like, wow, you can't ever go back from that.
Right.
When you start to have experiences of peace, when you start to apply it, you just can't go back from it. So it's the experience that is what you really want to get to. So it's not really about the theology and the words, but of course, like LF was saying, because we're trapped seemingly in this world of duality, that's what we have. We have words and we have symbols, whatever kind of symbols we use, whether it's sign language or drawings or diagrams or words. We have to start with symbols, because that's where we appear to be. But you use those symbols to bring you to a way of thinking that brings you beyond symbols entirely, and eventually brings you beyond thought entirely. And when you have that experience, you can look back at thought and look back at symbols and see it totally differently. And this stuff starts to make sense. And that's the ironic thing about the Course. It is not anything that you fully learn just intellectually, because if you have a thought system that's teaching you to get beyond individuality, beyond the separation perspective, which again on the ground means beyond judgment, beyond anger, beyond hate, beyond fear, beyond pain. But you have an investment in being an individual to protect yourself. You will have a mental blockage to understanding what will lead you beyond that. Because if pain protects your individuality, if attack and judgment protects your individuality, and this is teaching you how to get beyond pain and individuality, you will subconsciously not want to learn it. And that's why it seems so daunting at first. It's not really because it's so daunting, because we are that mind. It's not daunting what we ourselves are doing from that perspective, but it's our fear that denies that perspective and keeps it distinct to protect ourselves. So it's actually, we're pushing it away, is why we don't understand it. But gradually over time, as we start to look at our hatreds and our judgments, and we start to learn more and more that I don't have to judge, that judging is so painful and attacking is so painful that I don't want it anymore. And eventually what happens is the fear of losing our individuality becomes dwarfed by the pain of holding on to individuality. Right? The fear of losing our separate perspective becomes overshadowed by the pain of holding on to that perspective, and everyone has to get to that point. That's the only way it really works. So, ironically, the course is not, like you go into religion is about, let's proselytize and force yourself to be this way. And people take vows of celibacy and all this kind of stuff. And of course, they take a vow of celibacy and then, they're molesting kids, for instance, with the big thing with the Catholic priest, because that's not going to do it. You're not going to force yourself to, in a sense, try to overthrow your own investment in your own existence. A lot of people don't realize that's what it is, but that's why it's so hard to force yourself to do what you think is right a lot of the times. What you actually have to do is get to and remove those barriers, get to and remove the pain that you believe is your protection, get to the point of not wanting that anymore. And then the addiction or the whatever it is, it lets go of itself. It's a defense against letting go of our individuality.
Well said. Yeah, it takes that debate, though. I mean, we have to have that for us to be able to grow on this path and to get to a point where we can let go of the judgments, where we can start really growing in a very beneficial way to our own being. And this is all under that one certain level. This is all within the experience, within the drama that we're playing out here. For us to progress and to get to a state of contentment and joy and happiness, true contentment and joy and happiness. It takes those stages of development and debate, both internal and external, to be able to work these things out for ourselves.
Yeah, that's true. With very rare exception, people don't just jump to the top rung.
Right.
Like, I was mentioning the Ascended Masters that visited Gary Renard, and the way they describes it is there's basically 4 different levels or categories of learning, and everyone, like you'll find with A Course in Miracles is always from a universal concepts that you can use to understand the world, and no one escapes it, no matter how individual they believe they are. So everyone falls into one of these 4 categories with their thinking, either dualism, semi-dualism, non-dualism, or pure non-dualism. So so everyone will go through each of those degrees of learning in their journey, and some people might stay, for a longer or shorter duration in any particular category. Sometimes you might move back and forth if your fear prompts you to run back a little bit. But everyone, no matter how fast or how slow, will move through those different categories of learning. So when you look at dualism or duality, it's just that, the hardcore perspective of differentiation and separation. These are the people who are invested in racism, invested in my country rather than your country. Basically, they just have a very separative perspective, and they see everything from a separative perspective. Everything is different. Everyone is different. It doesn't matter how much you put on any kind of sameness underneath. You're not going to see anything different. And that's actually the perspective of most of our religions and most of our spiritualities. Like, for instance, if you look at Christianity, there's God, and He created the world and the universe, and He is a separate being who interacts with His separate creation. The distinction, separation. And then, of course, if you look at God Himself, He has separation in Him. Sometimes He hates you, and He sends a flood or whatever. And sometimes He loves you, and so on and so forth. And of course, sometimes He loves and hates in the same scenario. He loves Moses and his people, so He led them, out. But then He cursed the Pharaoh with frogs and stuff, and hardened his heart. So in the same scenario, He's hardened one man's heart. Because originally Pharaoh was, if you look at that Bible story, Pharaoh was going to let him go. But God hardened his heart to make him not let him go. And then He beat up on the Pharaoh to show how powerful he was. And then now He loves Moses, and it's like a very good thing. Look how much He loves the Israelites, So that's the God of duality. And that's where that comes from. It's a very dualistic perspective. And it's on a lower rung, which is why you can have people in a religion who dissociate to the point to where you can have a book that says, "He who is without sin cast the first stone. But it seems very right and good to burn someone at the stake because they're a witch. And I don't know how many people they burned in the Salem witch trials, but these are people burning people, right? When they, based upon the doctrine that says, "He who is without sin cast the first stone," right? When, according to the Bible story, when he did that, no one threw a stone because everyone has sin. Even the Bible says that there's no one who has not fallen short. But in that same dualistic state, you could dissociate that and believe you're holier than thou, and throw rocks at this person because of what they did. Exactly. It's all dualism. But with semi-dualism, a little bit of that duality starts to break down to where, still you might believe in a separate God, a separate deity who created something separate from him. But, maybe you start to think God is only love. He's a separate God, but he's only love. The duality starts to soften. And but of course the dilemma that you're in when you start to do that is you start to recognize, well, if God is only love, can he be hate as well? I mean, if he's only love, obviously he can't be hate. So then, you can only stay there so long without recognizing the great problem it presents when you have something that's semi-dualistic, that's sort of hateful but not. You look at the Garden of Eden story. Apparently he loved Adam and Eve, you saw them and they were good, and so on and so forth. They were made in his image. But everybody knows if you have a child, and the worst thing you want to do is, like, let's say you want to sit your child down for dinner, you don't sit them down with their plate of vegetables and then put a chocolate cake next to them and then say, whatever you do, don't touch that chocolate cake until you finish your vegetables. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
And then you walk out the room and then you come back in, and his hands are chocolatey covered, and his mouth is chocolately covered, and of course you ask him to touch that chocolate cake. No.
Yeah.
But of course the child is going to touch it. Everybody knows the child is going to touch the chocolate cake. You don't do that.
Yeah. So failure.
Exactly. So it starts to present a problem. So then you start to get more into non-dualism, and that gets more into what you all were talking about the universal mind. That starts to get more into the non-dualistic aspect, where you start to realize that there's one mind that's projecting everything. That there's really one thing in the universe, and everything is a part of this one mind. That's when you start getting into the more, like, a lot of people have a lot of sort of love and lack thing. Let's all get together, which is good, is along the way, and but it starts to become a perspective in which differences are more and more starting to be laid aside. So when you go into the Vedanta, that's more of a non-dualistic teaching, where they teach that really only Brahma is real and everything else is illusory. So that's more non-dualistic, where it's getting to the point where it recognizes that there's only one thing that's real, right? But still, from the non-dualistic perspective, it recognizes some illusion that for some reason oneness made. Like that's where the idea comes from, where people believe that, this one mind purposely separated itself so it could experience itself subjectively and then learn and then get back toward itself. So everything is one mind, and there's only one mind, and everybody's part of that one mind, but still they're separated for some good reason. So it's non-dualism, but it's recognizing oneness, but there's still, as you can tell, there's separation. If there's Brahma and there's the illusion, that's still not absolute non-dualism, and that's where pure non-dualism comes in, where it recognizes the authority of God so completely that it recognizes that all there is God.
Yeah. So
it doesn't matter. Go ahead.
So I see, like, the big fear behind it is the feeling that you're going to cease to exist anymore.
That's right.
When in actuality you're going to exist in everything, as a part of everything. Is that how I'm seeing it?
Actually, the former is actually more accurate. It's actually more accurate to say that you will cease to exist, because in that oneness, there is no distinction. Like the Course says, there's nothing distinct enough to recognize anything else or anything that's not itself. So it's not even that you will become oneness. Literally, the you that you are will recognize that you
are the oneness.
No. It'll recognize that you have no value either. In other words, the I itself has no value relative to absolute oneness. So in other words, in our experience of ourselves now, of course, we experience ourselves as an I. It's just that this I is usually a very angry I. very unhappy I. I'm unhappy because I didn't get what I want. I'm angry at you because of what you did. And we all experience this. That's what it means to be here. You're angry about something. You're unhappy about something. You're lacking something. You know, there's something that needs to be done. You know, whether it's me wanting to put out a book so I can have that sense of accomplishment, or someone wanted to be president, or someone wanted to save the whales. There's something we need to do to fix something, so I can feel good, so the world can be good. There's something that's not right. What happens is, when we finally, you know, initially, of course, we try to solve, and eventually I started to realize, you know, this solving isn't working. Like, I get what I want, but even after a while, it doesn't work anymore. You find out with everything. You know, you get a job, and it works, and then after a while, it doesn't work anymore. You have a relationship with someone, and after a while, the fire dies out. You know, so what happens is, when we start to let go of these investments, and we start to look more towards a real solution, and we become perfectly peaceful, we start to realize that our wholeness is within, and we're not angry anymore. We're not fearful anymore. We realize that even when we're perfectly peaceful, that I itself is still a disturbance. The I itself is a disturbance, and we happily let the I go. So the I does literally disappear. We recognize ourselves as nothing, and we let go of the investment in the I itself. But we don't get to that point until we let go of all of our defenses to recognizing that the I itself is nothing. So, you know, and it could be very frightening, you know, and that's the resistance. But there's not anything that's torn away from us. It's something that in the end we happily let go of when we finally realize, you know, what it really is. But we don't get to that point until, again, we let go of all the covers.
So, like, okay, for an example, the movie Inception, right? When they go into somebody else's dream, right? So inside that dream, right? All the other characters are still that one mind, right? Just different parts of that one mind, right? In that.
Okay. Yes.
So we are just parts of that one mind in this movie or in this dream, right?
Yes, in that sense, yes. Every single individual is a projected fragment of that one mind, or a reflection of that one mind.
So I guess what I'm getting hung up at is that when we go back to that one mind, right, and we realize that we are nothing, you know, or
who
that
was the real dreamer?
Yeah, right. So that one mind itself, that one mind is, you know, the overall mind. Is that not a conscious mind?
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, yeah, obviously we have this illusory experience of existence and consciousness, and that is the reflection of the projection of that one consciousness. So basically, if you take every single consciousness in existence, collectively, it is that consciousness. So in a sense, there's really no difference. But that consciousness itself is still only illusory. So, you know, there's really no intellectual answer that I'll be able to give you to satisfy that conundrum, because, you know, in a sense, how can we even be talking about it if the consciousness doesn't exist, because we're talking about it? So obviously, right? So there's no intellectual answer to it, but
if you're going to answer that question, I was going to ask you, how does something come from nothing? So
exactly. There's no intellectual answer to it. Yeah. But you know, but what I found is, and that's not really what got me stuck to the course. What got me stuck to the course is that I was hurting. That I was hurting, and I was wanting to find something to that I could not hurt anymore. You know, and that's what really blocks you in. You know, the metaphysical understanding comes as a result of that, because the pain is a barrier to protect us from that understanding. But as you start to let go, like for instance, about the first or second year I was studying the course, and I started to learn these concepts, and you know, I started applying it to the intellect, because I was very proud of my intellect. You know, I always made good grades in school, and I was able to understand things and things like that. But then, just like how we was talking about, when pleasure and pain is the same, everything is the same. If the fact is, everyone is a part of one mind, and as one mind is projecting everything and everyone, then the intellect is an illusion. One person being more or less intelligent is just an illusory construct that we make, no different than, somebody being stronger or weaker. In a universe that's a fact, but in truth, if it's all just a dream, just like in The Matrix. You remember the movie The Matrix? That movie, and Neo was fighting Morpheus, and Morpheus was like, do you really believe that that's why I'm stronger when we're in an illusion? That's really the way it is. So the same thing with the intellect. It's a denial that the mind has set up to make it seem like one person is smarter, and we can have all of these different dynamics of judgment and hate. I'm better, you're worse, and control because I'm smart enough to make this invention to dominate this culture. Just that one different dynamic, that one dynamic of difference makes so many dynamics in the universe that we can use to hate and judge. So when I started to consider this, and I started to realize how much of a lie intellect is, and what was so much of a identifying factor to myself, something that I identify with so strongly, in that moment when I sincerely questioned it and let it go, the entire universe disappeared. Everything disappeared. And I was mind. And as mind, I was able to see a bunch of activity. And everything in the universe was just meaningless activity. The I that right now seems so important, that seems so, right? Because everyone is absolutely important to themselves, right? So,
Right.
Everybody's taking care of themselves and brushing their teeth and eating and breathing, and everybody sees themselves as important. But the I, when I saw myself from this perspective, was absolute just meaningless activity. And everything was meaningless activity. And the little meaningless activity that was Darryl Berry was no more or less meaningless than any other meaningless activity. Everything was just meaningless activity, and it was absolutely terrifying. And next thing I know, everything just ended, and I'm back sitting in the college chair, in class, and it's like, wow. So that experience never left me. So, but I got to that experience from the ground floor, from recognizing that, I'm judging and I'm attacking, and it doesn't feel good. I'm seeing things in the world as valuable. And either I can't get it, or I get it and I still, it might work for a little while. I might feel good for a little while, but a little while later it doesn't work. That's why people get $1 million, they got to get $2 million. You get one woman, you get one man, you got to get another one or the next one or whatever. It doesn't work. So, but when I started to interpret my life from a perspective that allowed me to feel peace, regardless of what happened more and more, then I started to more and more have experiences to where it started to make sense that this mind doesn't exist. So it's not anything that you learn intellectually. It's something that you gradually start to experience more and more. And I'm sure even that experience, I'm sure there's an even greater experience than that. But it was enough to where I never looked at the world the same. And just like walking upstairs, or just like any kind of plateau, when you take a step up, you can see the next step a little more clearly. Right. So each experience I had like that, I can see this lofty idea of this mind not existing. It makes a lot more sense. It's based upon experience. So, so whatever you do understand, just start to look at the world. And again, the real bread and butter is our judgment, because, everybody knows that judgment hurts. They may not want to admit it. Oftentimes we're so caught up in trying to make our judgments work that all we want to do is just make sure that we prove this person as wrong well enough. We prove that this person is really the victimizer, is really the attacker, like we spoke about on another show. People are so angry at the government when all they have to do is just, you have 100 people in the boat, there's 2 people doing something crazy, 98 people row the other way. They can row as hard as they want. They're not going to overcome the rowing of those 98 people. 98 people could throw them off the boat. 98 people could do whatever they want. 7 billion people could do whatever they want to this little, cabal of people that's doing all this stuff. But what it does, the reason why they don't do it is because look at all the opportunities of judgment. I could judge contrails. Right. I could judge police. Right. I could judge money. I could judge all this kind of stuff. And that's that you see over and over, people judging and attacking, and look at what they're doing. They get all kind of mileage out of that. it allows them to hold on to their individuality and take the guilt from it and project it onto someone else, or take the fear from it. No matter what makes me afraid in the world, whether it's I almost got run over and I'm afraid, whether it's my girlfriend, my boyfriend's going to leave me, I'm afraid, whether I'm going to lose my job, I'm afraid, I'm getting pulled around, I'm afraid of. That fear that I felt, when I recognize all of this is nothing, is meaningless activity that could all be let go, which that quickly would have meant that this mind that's projecting the meaningless activity could be let go as well. That terror I felt, that's the fear that we always fear. That's the only fear there is. The reason why we want to have this world and we cling to it and we cling to all the things that we attack and judge is so we can take this fear and hide it behind all of these props in the universe. You know, like just like an exception. You know, all the things that person is feeling in that dream, all those things that seem to be causing it, they're props. He's dreaming them. Like you were saying, all of these figures are his dream. So if you're the dreamer, dreaming the dream figures, obviously whatever they do, the emotions must come from you. They can't come from anywhere else. But we want to hold on to this illusion of separation so we can believe that the fear is elsewhere. And now I don't have to deal with it. The fear of the problem is you, and it acts as a defense. Because again, once I let go of that investment in separation, which is my intellect, and I let go of believing in the importance of it and the identity that I had with it, because it was such a linchpin of my identity, you know, which it obviously still is, I still appear to be here, because it's such a linchpin of my identity, and in that moment when I let it go, my identity was let go. Just for that moment, my identity dispersed, and it can happen that quickly because all of it, that's the way it is. We really are that mind. The illusion of separation is just that, is an illusion. I seem to be here in this chair talking to you, and you seem to be there, but really we're that mind with a whole bunch of meaningless activity that it wants to focus on to defend against the fact that it doesn't exist. We are that mind. And the fear that I had makes the projection that makes it appear as if I'm this illusory individual person, which, of course, in my experience, I don't seem illusory at all. And then, again, as soon as I'm in this position, then I have all the things I hate, all the things I love, all the things I fear, because I'm projecting that fear, that guilt over being separate. I'm projecting the fear of losing my individuality. I'm projecting the guilt of believing I actually separated from oneness, because from the perspective of non-dualism, pure non-dualism, all there is oneness. It doesn't matter what you call it, God, Brahma, reality, oneness, whatever. But all there is that one thing, for lack of a better word. No distinction at all. So if I believe I'm here, that means there's no longer just oneness. There's me and there's you. So obviously oneness has been destroyed because we're here, as the question asks. Where can nothing come from? Obviously we're here, we exist, which means that oneness must be destroyed. There's no longer absolute oneness. There's two-ness, three-ness, there's trillioness. You know. Right. So from that perspective, from that individual perspective, all we can do is attack and project to keep ourselves intact, and that's where all the guilt comes from. That's where all the pain comes from. Is a defense against recognizing that we don't exist. So eventually, what happens is the pain of that guilt and that pain of that fear, you know, the pain of that experience of separation becomes so great that just like that experience I had when I was sitting in class and I questioned that linchpin of my existence, we start to question it all. We start to question our adjustments. We start to question our hatred. We start to question our fears. And the more that we let go of these things, the more we start to recognize ourselves as that mind. And the more we start to recognize that mind as not existing as well. So, you know, it's a long process. It takes many, many lifetimes to go through. And that's one reason why we have lifetimes. One, obviously, initially because of separation. Not only am I a separate individual, but now I have separate lifetimes. Right? And now you hurt me in this lifetime, I hurt you in this lifetime. There's nothing but separation and division and hatred and all different kind of ways of projecting our guilt. But, you know, all you have to do is just start to apply it, and to whatever extent you understand it, and the experience itself will start to dawn on you. It's nothing that has to be believed, and that's the good thing about it. You know, when I first came into it, I didn't want anything to do with it. The first time I found the course was actually I was in actually high school. I was like in 10th grade, and like I said, I've been trying to find answers since I don't know when. And I went to this metaphysical bookstore, and I saw this flyer for something called the Course in Miracles study group. So I went there, and you see all these people, these grown people with gray hair and everything. I'm just kids sitting there watching, and I'm on the front row where I always sit, and whatever this guy was talking about, with it. Like most people who teach the course have no idea what it's talking about. Again, because they have their own fear as well. So I was like, whatever it is, I don't want anything to do with it. And one day I went to the bookstore and I picked it up years later. And at this point I had gotten out of religion, so I didn't really want anything to do with religion. So it seemed to be mentioning God and Jesus and stuff. So like, I'm through with religion, I don't want anything to do with it. Still, again, years later, I saw another flyer in the metaphysical bookstore, and I said, let me check it out again. And this other study group was just a bunch of old ladies, like a bunch of gray-haired ladies just sitting around reading the book. It was just like a book club. So I was like, well, I could read on my own, Yeah. But then I found Gary's book, and when I found the Disappearing Universe, that's what really started to put it in a nutshell for me and explain what it was really about. And and again, I mean, you're not going to be able to focus on that level anyway because we experience ourselves in the world. We're going to have to go to work in the morning, and so on and so forth. So that's where it's actually applied at. You don't have to be airy-fairy with it. You don't have to, you could apply this thought system and nobody even know. You could live a normal life and have sex and have money and have a boat, whatever it is you want to do. You can go live in a monastery too, if that's your thing. Whatever it is you want to do, But you just learn initially to recognize pain is not what it seems to be. Pain is not what it seems to be. Fear is not what it seems to be. Guilt is not what it seems to be. The lack that we feel, the emptiness we feel, it is not what it seems to be. And that's why, as much as we attack people, we still don't feel good. That's why, anybody who attacks people, who hurts people, secretly, they really hate themselves. It's really their own guilt that they're denying and projecting out. This is why so often people commit suicide, because of the hatred and pain that we feel inside, the self-hatred, the feeling of being unworthy, not being enough. Everybody experiences that. It comes from our investment in that thought, that idea of separation. That's where it all comes from. But when we start to look at our lives and start to recognize that and start to withdraw that projection and really look at where it's at and recognize that because it's coming from a projection of what never happened, the guilt that I see in you, obviously it can't be your problem because I'm projecting it onto you. So thus we can let that person off the hook, and then we can start to not be judgmental. And it feels so good to not be judgmental. It feels so good to not hate people. And I'm not saying I'm totally free of that. I still have my judgments and my hatreds and all that stuff. But I notice when I do forgive someone, I notice when I do look at someone who I think did me wrong, and I recognize that though they did what they did, though whatever hateful, vicious thing they did it. The Course is not about denial. But being that you did that does not make me angry. The anger, my response to it, my internal response is totally me, which is why, people could, like Yeshua, could be crucified and still be at peace. It's mentioned in the Bible as forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. So even though he was being murdered unjustly, he was still able to have a forgiving perspective because his identity was totally beyond the body, and he knew that no matter what happens in the world, nothing in it could be guilt-making, because the world is an effect of the mind, right? Mm-hmm. So then when you withdraw that, and now you recognize I'm the mind, the guilt is in me, well, if the effect isn't real, because if all there is oneness, and if the effect is a dualistic world, which can't be real because it's dualistic, and if I'm the mind that's projecting it, I can't be real either, so the guilt in me can't be real. And then you start to recognize, you start to have an experience. I mean, I remember the first time it happened, it was just daunting. I just remember the experience of something not making me upset. Something that would have made me upset, but I realized, and you start to realize you can live your life totally differently. Like all the different ways that we, a lot of the things that we do is based upon hatred and judgment, and based upon the feeling of being wronged. This person wronged me. And the solutions that we can come up with when we don't feel wronged can be totally, it's just amazing, the perspective that you can have on the same situation when you're not angry.
Yeah, I had one experience here a couple of years ago where I stepped off my front porch and it was icy out, and I slipped and I broke my ankle. And instead of going shit or ow or yelling in pain, I said, okay, where's the silver lining in this? That was my first response, first thoughts, first words. And after I said that and after I thought that, I actually was shocked at myself that I responded that way instead of having that, the patented or the standard reaction that the third dimensional or our third dimensional society seems to require in that situation. I was just impressed with myself that I responded that way.
Yeah, awesome. Well, it sounds like from your habit of starting to look from a larger perspective. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, I find it's really about monitoring your thoughts, and for me, once I've been, going down this road for a while, I monitor my thoughts on a regular basis. And yeah, those thoughts of judgment, somebody cuts you off or whatever, those still come up, but the more you monitor them and the more you realize what's going on, the less frequent it happens. So instead of getting mad in certain situations or casting judgment in certain situations, it's almost, retraining your brain, retraining the way you think and the things you think about.
That's right. But there's a danger of focusing on it just at the surface level, though. I mean, that's definitely a part of it. But one thing they have is similar to the Catholic priest scenario was given earlier. They looked at themselves and made a vow, and in their belief, spirituality meant not having sex, so they decided they was going to not have sex. But what they was doing behind closed doors. So what I've observed is, if you just try to look at it from that level and just try to change your behavior in a sense, you can, that unconscious guilt will still rear its ugly head, and then next thing you know, before you realize it, you lash out and attack, or it becomes more passive aggressive. So there's a danger in not really bringing it to the mind level. And that's why a lot of the loving lighters, you can see them kind of explode one time. One of the when I was less savvy in the course back in the day, when I used to actually try to, like I said, most course teachers don't really understand what it's really talking about. They don't really address the mind level and the existence level. I went to this study group, and the lady was just saying a whole bunch of inaccurate stuff. But rather than just allowing her to have her inaccuracy and not going back, I tried to correct her and stuff like that, and which was the wrong thing to do. But she just exploded. I mean, she just absolutely exploded. And I mentioned Kenneth Wapnick, who, Kenneth Wapnick is like the primary teacher. And when I say primary teacher, I mean, he's not widely recognized as a primary teacher as far as people who want to be the primary teacher. But the lady who scribed the course, the voice that scribed the course, he was like around at that period of time, and he identified them as the one out of that group who will be like responsible for teaching, and somebody was responsible for help disseminating or whatever.
Yeah.
And but I mentioned his name, and so many people who want to be the teacher, like we was talking about the distinction, they want to be the distinguished one. So a lot of them hate this man because because he teaches exactly what the course says. And I mentioned his name, and she became absolutely furious. And but before that, she had that sort of love and light persona and love and light, and and speaking in that kind of funny voice, and it was like I'm so love and light all the time. But when she heard something, when she heard his name, and she started to hear something that contradicted what she wanted to believe, that repressed anger came out. So it's a great danger in looking at it from the surface level, and really acknowledging that the anger and the pain is more than just looking at myself and trying to stop myself from lashing out. The anger is really looking at the fact that I want the pain to be there to protect myself. It's a choice that I'm making. It's coming from my own investment in separation and individuality. And until you address it at that level at some point, it would always rear its ugly head again and again and again. And I've seen it several times, and I've of course seen it in myself. When I first started coming along, when I was less willing to address the level myself, and I would go back to looking at it a different way and feel the pain that would send me back to it. But the unconscious guilt will rear its ugly head if you don't eventually at some point start to recognize where that pain and guilt is coming from. It has nothing to do with the world. So, a good example is a lady came to my class one day, and she was telling me about, she had been coming for a little while, and what we got in the habit of doing was at the beginning of class, we would talk about things in her life and things she might be forgiving, and I would help her with different ways of looking at it from the course's perspective. And the first thing she told me about was she had like a tax bill from the government, and they said that she owed her some money. And but she had been practicing forgiveness, and when the situation came up, she didn't feel any anger, she didn't feel any judgment, and she just addressed it from a very calm and peaceful place. And she was just saying, "Wow, it was just nice. I could see how it's starting to work out. Normally I would be very angry, but I noticed I didn't have any anger." And then when she addressed it calmly and looked at everything, she didn't owe as much money as she thought she did. As the government was actually wrong to a certain extent, it worked out a lot better than she thought she would. And she reflected on the fact that months ago or years ago, she'd have been angry and blowing up, and it probably would have worked out a totally different way. And she was like, that's awesome. That was a good forgiveness lesson. And then she said, I had another experience like the other day where this lady cut me off on the road. And she said, I noticed that, I didn't feel any anger, but I noticed that in my hand, I just hit the horn really, really fast. And I was looking at the lady, and then she was looking at me, and she started apologizing to me. But she was like, I didn't really feel any anger. And I said, well, hold up. I said, you may want to be careful with that one because, your body doesn't just act by itself, Yeah. Exactly. So, and the Course says that specifically in the preface. It says all thought produces form at some level. All your body, whatever it is in the world, there's a thought behind it. So I said that there probably was some kind of anger there. But that quickly was denied and projected out in the honking of the horn, and that's what projection does. It acts as a release valve. If I'm angry at you, then you're the guilty one. So just that quickly, I honk the horn, you're guilty, I don't feel it anymore, and obviously the woman got the message because she was staring at her. She honked the horn, and the lady started apologizing. So the honking of the horn and the staring said, you're guilty. And the lady said, I understand I'm guilty, and started apologizing. And I started explaining that to her. She was like, I could really see what you're saying because just that quick, I just, I hit the horn really fast, and like I can certainly see what you're saying. So, and that's what could happen. The trick that we do on ourselves is that we start to realize we want to be peaceful, and then we start to sort of trick ourselves into denying the anger rather than actually being peaceful. So that the peace doesn't come from denying the anger or trying to react in a peaceful way without really looking at it. The anger that's really there, it really comes from looking at the anger, but recognizing where it really comes from. Recognizing that the anger is not coming from you, it's not coming from outside or seeming outside, it's coming from inside. But the inside source, it can't really be coming from there either, because again, the separation never occurred, because the mind that's projecting it is not really there.
Here we go, back to there.
So yeah, it always gets back to there eventually, but you don't start there. But again, pain will lead you there. That's the good thing about it. The Course, when the Course explains where pain is coming from, which again it comes from the belief in separation and investment in separation, you don't have to believe that. But what's going to happen is when you start to blame it on the world, it will fail. That's the thing about it. In anything that's a fact, if it's true, then it's provable. Then it will not fail. It's an absolute. So the way that it proves itself is simply that nothing else works. Again, you get the girl, you get the boy, it doesn't work. You still don't feel happy. You feel happy for a while, but it doesn't work. Not only do you no longer feel happy, but now you want to run away from the person. The person who is your salvation, perhaps you get to know him after a year, and you're like, oh my gosh, what did I do? Or or you just can't get the girl. You can't get the boy. She doesn't want you, and you feel the pain. You get the money you want, and you still don't feel complete. Or you can't get the money. Like George Carlin said, is a tight knit club, and you ain't in it. However rich you get, they're going to print up more money and make themselves more rich. So back in the day they made $10 a week or whatever, and that was good. I mean, now you might make 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 a week, but now there's billionaires in the world. So it doesn't really matter. So, and then of course those people are not happy either. They're not happy owning everything. Now they have to own the people too. And they're making chips to put in people. It's never enough. So what happens is when you start to realize that nothing here works, it's never enough, then what the Course is saying about the real place everything is coming from, it starts to make sense. You actually come from it at the opposite angle. And again, the more it starts to make sense and you start to be able to look at the world more surely, then like you have that experience I had where things start to disappear. It makes more sense. Well, I see what you're saying. I have the experience where this is just meaningless stuff. And again, when you look at cause and effect, an effect is determined by its cause, and the cause is determined by its effect. So, if you have, let's say, a bucket of blue balls, and it's filled with blue balls, if I take anything out of that bucket, what is it going to be? It's going to be a blue ball. That's all it is. So, if you have this world that's just absolutely failing and not working, and you start to look at it differently, and you have a perspective where you recognize all that stuff that's not working is meaningless, and you realize it's coming from this mind, and it's nothing but meaninglessness, guess what that mind must be?
Meaningless.
Exactly. So if it's meaningless and if it's nothing, well, then we're starting to get into what is something. And so it all starts to, it starts to work step by step by step, and it just proves itself. So again, it's not anything anybody has to believe, and again, it's not anything you'll be able to believe in that sense anyway, because like we were saying, there's no way I can intellectually explain how the mind doesn't exist while I'm explaining it to you. It's not going to happen. But I tell you what, you can have an experience where your question will be answered, and everybody will get there eventually, in this life or another life, in whichever path they take. Like the Course says, it's just one form of the universal curriculum, and there's people from every path. Like I always point to Mother Teresa. She was a Catholic. And obviously the Bible is going to be at odds with the Course. The Course says the world doesn't exist. The Course says God is only God. There's nothing else but God. God is absolute perfection, so He can't make anything that's not perfection. So He has nothing to do with the world at all, which is why it doesn't exist. God can't make something that crumbles, that breaks, that changes. It's only timelessness, only changelessness, only eternity. The Bible says in the beginning, God created the heaven and earth, so that's not going to match. But Mother Teresa would give most Course students a run for their money as far as how peaceful she was, as far as her perspective. I remember, because I love Mother Teresa. I like watching her videos about her speaking and reading her books. And just the other day, I was catching up on her again, and she was doing a speaking engagement, and somebody asked her, he was like, people are saying you're like a living saint. They're saying, people are comparing you to a living saint because, how you are. What are your thoughts on this? And this is what she said. She said, I have to be holy in the position I'm at, and you have to be holy in the position that you're at. And she said, holiness is not a luxury of the select few. She said it's a duty of everyone. So her basic answer was, it doesn't matter what job you have or what you're doing in life. Everyone has the duty of looking at everyone from a place of peace, from a place of love. I mean, that totally describes the perspective of the Course. It doesn't matter what you do in the world because it's all illusory anyway. What matters is how you look at the world. It doesn't matter if you have sex or don't have sex. It doesn't matter if you become a millionaire or you're a bum. Of course, you might have a preference to be a millionaire, and there's nothing wrong with that and nothing with going after that. But if you don't look at it differently, you will still be in pain. If you don't look at it differently, you will still feel lack, right? And if you do look at it differently, you will still be at peace, whether you're a millionaire or you're not. If you look at Buddha, he was rich. He gave away his riches to go pursue right, a different way. Because he knew that peace really comes from within. But you don't have to give up your millions to do that. But it's just an illustration of the fact that it doesn't matter what your status is in life, you can still be at peace. Totally aligns with the Course. So it doesn't matter what path you take. So you'll find people in all different kind of paths who, Ramana Maharshi, he was a Hindu, but of course he didn't really have a path. He just sort of became enlightened like Mother Teresa, and probably been they built up over different lifetimes, and they looked at it through their little internal process. They didn't really have a process in that sense, but a process of no process. And you have Ramana. Let me see, what is his name again? Ramakrishna Paramhansa. He was a Hindu. He was a unique case because he studied different religions. There was a period of time when he studied Hinduism. And when he started to become into his spiritual realization, his perspective was, it doesn't matter what path you take. So he spent short amounts of time in different paths. He spent a certain amount of time as a Muslim, and he lived his life as a Muslim. He prayed 5 times a day. He did everything that a Muslim does. And then he spent a little bit of time as, I don't remember every religion it was, but he spent so much time in every religion, and he found out that that holiness was still underneath it. So it's not about the path, it's not about the theology, but again, everyone feels pain, and everyone wants to feel peace. And changing the way you think about things will lead you to peace, a peace that's unshakable by the world. That's why the Bible talks about the peace that passeth understanding. And the Course talks about the peace of God. You go to Psalms, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. A peace that does not leave you no matter where you are, no matter what's going on, no matter what anyone does or does not do. A wholeness that's there, no matter what you get what you want or you don't get what you want. And that's the only way you're going to be happy, is if you start to come from a perspective beyond the separate, beyond the illusory, beyond the ephemeral, beyond what does not last. And then the idea of something that's changeless, that's eternal, right, starts to make more sense, and starts to make more, it starts to become more approachable. Especially when you start to realize, obviously, this world can be it, because everything breaks down. Even if it's a star that won't go supernova for, a million years, everything changes, and change is pain. If you have change, you will have pain. Again, you have what you want, it will change. Even if it doesn't change, you will change. It'll wear down. It's 1 pound of whatever, it doesn't do it. Now you need 2 pounds. Whatever drug it was, one little bit of it doesn't help you anymore. You need a whole lot of it. Then it just becomes a bad habit. Everything fails because it does not get to the heart of the source, of the cause of the pain, which is our investment in separation, that investment in being separate and being distinct from that oneness, So as we start to let go of that pain, and again we get to the point where we realize that I itself is not viable either, and we let that go, So it's a process, it's a whole bunch of steps. You don't just jump there, but eventually you get to the point where just like that person. I guess we all had that person who, initially we thought they were the world to us, but then we realized, man, I made a mistake, Eventually we realized everything is like that. The universe is like that, and the I is like that as well. We thought it was so important, and we thought it was so valuable. Just like me, I had that experience, that universal experience, but I felt fear at going beyond. It was frightening. But eventually we realized, this is not anything to hold on to either. This mind, this idea of existing is not anything to hold on to either. And then we went into let that go as well.
It seems like, that big fear, that fear of separation, or that fear of loss of their individuality. I think that one thing that could set people's mind at ease is the understanding that we're on a process here, and we're all going to get to a point to reintegrate into that oneness eventually, but that eventually could be billion years down the road in our perspective of time here, or lifetimes. How many lifetimes does that take before we're ready to go to reintegrate, or to I guess that's the best way to
Exactly right. And the Course says that directly. It says, do not fear that you'll just be lifted up from time into eternity. So it's not like it's going to just happen. It's not something that's taken away from you.
It's a choice, isn't it?
Exactly. It's a choice. So it happens it takes as long as you want it to take. The change doesn't happen because it's taken away from you. The change happens because you realize you don't want it. Like you said, it's a choice. So eventually it starts with, I don't want this pain anymore. But after all the pain is gone, we realize I don't want this eye anymore. So it's definitely a process. It doesn't have to be, but it has to be because we're so afraid and we want to hold on to our experience of individuality. We want to focus on the idea of obviously there's something here because something can't come from nothing. That's a defense. But what happens is, however we think about that, it doesn't change the fact that I'm hurting. It doesn't change the fact that I'm lacking something, even if it's oxygen. If you ever happen to be under a pool a little too long and you're swimming up to the top, that's a great discomfort not to have the oxygen, not to have the breath you want. So existence is lack. We're always lacking. So eventually we start to realize that we can have a quote life, a quote existence, where there is absolutely no lack, where there's only abundance, where there's so it becomes something that we want. We become eventually willing to let go of pain, recognizing that it's pain. Basically, we have everything turned inside out and upside down. We erroneously think what is real is not. We erroneously think what is valuable, what is valueless is valuable. And we have everything turned around. And what the process of rethinking and reinterpreting the world starts to do, it starts to teach us to put everything in proper perspective. And we start to see things exactly as they are, which is really in the end nothing. And we become willing to let it go, even the I.
Right. The judgment falls away.
That's right. So that's always going to be the first step. So, it's been said that some spiritual masters they hold on to something. Kenneth Wapnick mentioned this. Apparently, there was this spiritual master. I don't know her name, but she was always angry at her niece, whatever. Everything else she was perfectly at peace about, but she was always angry at her niece. And she said that when I stop being upset with my niece, then I'm ready to go. I'm ready to let this body down and be done with this. And right around the point where she stopped paying her niece that kind of attention, it was just even soon she died after that, and just she was ready to let go, and not be around anymore. So we'll be here, and when I say here, I mean in existence, whether in this life or another lifetime, as an individual, as long as you want to hold on to it. But again, eventually it starts to dawn on us that ultimately holding on to it is where all pain is coming from. But because of the nature of the mind, because the idea is an idea of separation, it separates. So the idea, the one mind holding on to the idea of separation now appears to be a universe of a whole bunch of separate things. And now that one idea of lack, now it's in so many different things. Now it's in oxygen, it's in not having a person in my life, it's in not having enough money, it's in so many different things spread around our lives, and we can attend to each one individually and solve this one and not solve that one, and so on and so forth. It just made into such a very convoluted thing. But really in the end, it all ends up being just that one same thought, that one same thing, that one same idea. But lifetime after lifetime, we spend dealing with each individual thing until eventually we realize they're all the same thing, just like that experience I had. When I had that experience, one thing didn't stick out. Hitler killing people wasn't any more or less meaningless than the person on the street kicking your cat or whatever. All of it was equally illusory. All of it was equally meaningless. All of it equally. So that's the way it is right now. But our experience of things being varied is an expression of our investment in holding on to that idea. So as long as we're holding on to it, then that's what we have to do. If something upsets us a little bit, you might be able to forgive it, and then eventually we start to be able to forgive the bigger things. There was this guy named Michael Burks, who was one of the translators of the Course. He helped translate it to German, I believe. And he was on this documentary on the Course in Miracles. They had several people who did certain things with the Course, and they were telling their story. His story was he was a German Jew, and around the time of Hitler, when Hitler was coming into power, he was a kid, and when Hitler came into power and the Third Reich came into power, almost his whole family was killed by the Nazis. And but his particular family, they was able to get out of Germany because they knew like a Christian pastor, and he forged some papers to make it look as if they were cradle-born Christians. So to make it look like they were just German Christians instead of German Jews, so they could escape Germany. So that's what they did, and they got out. But so he had anger at the Nazis because they basically killed all his family. He had guilt because he felt so ashamed and so guilty because he felt like he abandoned his family and abandoned his heritage by lying about being a Jew to escape. And of course, he was just a kid at the time. He didn't really do it anyway. But we all heard the dynamic of a kid, parents divorce and they feel responsible or whatever. So he felt all kind of guilt, all kind of pain was added up to it, and it meant him out of anger to the Nazis. But he said, of course, he hated Hitler most of all. Couldn't forgive him for anything. He was Antichrist or whatever in his mind. But what he was able to do, he was able to forgive the little Nazis and feel more peace, because he said what made him want to do it and what made him, again, just like me, hold on to the course was he was looking for something to get rid of this anger and this hatred. He was basically angry all the time. And so he started to apply it to the little Nazis. And one thing he noticed, he felt peace, or at the least he felt less anger. He felt less anger in his life. He felt better. So then he applied it to the bigger Nazis and the bigger Nazis. And eventually he said he was able to even forgive Hitler and feel this. Because, I mean, the thing is, just like you with your experience with your ankle breaking. No matter how angry you was, it wasn't going to heal your ankle. It wasn't going to change the scenario at all. Just like him, no matter how angry he is at Hitler, it's not going to change the fact that what happened in the world had happened. But I bet you were able to handle the situation a lot better, being that you were peaceful. I mean, if you were angry and you said, you might have just been so angry that you moved your foot and hurt it more, or felt more pain because you banged it against the floor. We would do all kind of crazy things when we were angry that hurt ourselves even more. But he felt more peace. And so that's what it's really about, at least at the start. It's really just about recognizing that we could be peaceful. And the anger that we blame other people for, we can look at it a different way, and we can recognize it is really coming from us. We can withdraw that projection, and eventually more and more we start to realize we can walk the world and not be affected by anything. And the psychological strength of that strength is tremendous, which is again why, Yeshua could be crucified and not feel any pain, physical or psychological. It's tremendous to be able to be in that place. And again, I'm not there yet, but I've experienced glimpses of it, of just, being at peace when I would have been angry, or being angry and then forgiving and looking at it from that perspective that I've outlined, and then experiencing peace. Not a peace because I'm so spiritual and I'm going to forgive you. Not a peace because, I'm going to just deny it. But a peace because nothing ever happened to make the guilt in the first place. It's just a tremendous perspective. And I mean, it can't really be described really. It's just a different perspective that it's not a forced oneness. Like there's a forced oneness where you try to force yourself to see yourself as universal, and there's also a oneness that dawns on you. There's a oneness, a grander perspective that dawns on you from removing these barriers and blockages that comes from this guilt and pain and denying where it's really coming from. So it really just explains itself in that sense.
It does. It does. Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow, some good stuff there, Darryl. So,
awesome.
So, inside this illusion, you shared with us that you had another illusory experience here recently.
Oh yeah. Talking about the craft contact.
Yeah. Let's share that before we're done tonight.
Awesome. So, as you were saying, we have to do something. So actually, myself personally, I go along three fronts of trying to escape. Because we have enlightenment, which is awakening from everything, which I'm not ready for. There's ascension with the out-of-body experience and accessing different dimensions. And there's also what I call meta-transfer, which is either aligning yourself with a different timeline or leaving and going to a different planet and so forth. So in my efforts along that line, I'm initiating contact again. So I started doing my meditation thing and reaching out for contact, and I had a brief glimpse of a female in one of my imagery. And my friend Lewis, who's in my OBE research study where we meet each other out of body and we do telepathic communication, I played it and went to him and let him know that it was her and that she's going to meet me and stuff like that. So cool. And a few weeks later, I had planned to go out on a retreat, and I was telepathically making contact and stuff. And one night, I had a quote dream, which was really a non-physical experience where I was in a location, and this ET craft came down. It was a spherical or at least an oval-shaped craft, and it hovered down. I was with a group of people. And I saw my nephew there who, once in a while I see him in the out-of-body experience, so I tell him about it. And, and I was a bit hesitant because I was like, I was planning on writing some books still and stuff like that. But I was like, the hell with it, I'm going by. So nobody else wants to come. There was a group of people there. But I'm like, I'm bye, guys. I'm getting on this craft, and I'm not coming back. So I got on the craft. And I told people who know me, I told them, I said, look, this is what I'm working on doing. I'm going to have contact again. Get on the craft. I'm going to get on it. But I said, what I'll do is, if it's possible, I'll do a flyby so you can see the craft. And if you want, I'll pick you up too if they're cool with it. But at the least that we can, I'll do a flyby, which is not always possible because there might still be a few secret government groups that want to shoot them down, and sometimes people are too afraid to see something like that. But my friend Lewis, he's into this stuff, so I knew he would be cool. So the next day, he calls me up. He says, D, I'm surprised you're here. I'm surprised you're here. He's like, I thought you came to show me you wasn't going to be here anymore. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, this craft was outside my work. I got it on video. And as soon as he saw it, in my third eye, because I've been practicing and stuff, and my clairvoyance was starting to kick in, I saw the craft, I saw the location, I saw this spherical craft in the air, and I asked him, I said, what did the craft look like? He said it looked like a sphere. And I asked him, I said, well, what did it do? Trying to make sure it's not a balloon or something or anything like that. Like, what happened? How did it leave? And he said when it left, it just went straight up in the air, just at breakneck speed, just whoosh, just went straight up.
Yeah.
I was like, awesome. So it seems as if whoever these beings were, just like I had a non-physical experience where I got on the craft and we went up and we went around a few places, and they had the time to do a flyby by Lewis, and he got it on video to confirm the experience, and I could actually send you that video clip right now. It's not like the best clip in the world or anything. He took it on his cell phone, but people who know me, I'm not going to be lying about it or anything. Yeah. But you could download that and take a look at it, and so it's like awesome. So that was just an awesome experience. So I'm going to continue having contacts, and I'll go back and forth. Because sometimes I think I want to stay on the planet and try to help it along or do my little writing thing and everything, but when push comes to shove, I'll probably just get on the craft and not come back, just like I did then. So, but if y'all interested, I'll do a flyby by y'all as well.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, I'd love to see it. Yeah. So this was a completely conscious experience, or was it?
It was semi-conscious. I was conscious enough to.
That's interesting. That's interesting. The interface between the out-of-body states, or the projected state, and the third-dimensional state, to where they can overlap and manifest here, from that other plane, or for lack of a better term, you're able to cross the barrier and be perceptible or perceivable in the third dimension.
That's right. And it seems mystical to us, but to them it's just technology. Like that. I mean, there's some beings who their physical existence is our non-physical, right? And there's some beings who exist in our physical, but they have the technology to dematerialize, to make themselves non-physical. So, so my experience is like this craft. It was obviously a physical craft because it's on video, but obviously they have a technology, or they're just that evolved where they can actually see your non-physical being as well. And to throw you for another loop, it could also be this as well. Like there's this guy named, he's not so known, he's from Israel. There's a guy named Adrian DeVere. I love his book. It's called X3. It's not in print right now, but I'm working on trying to find out who did it so I can publish it myself again, republish it. But he met these beings, this certain race of extraterrestrial beings, and what they're able to do is they're actually able to split anything. Like they literally split it. So, they have a technology to where, like, of course, everything is composed of molecules and everything. And we know that everything is mostly empty space. So even your solid physical body is mostly empty space, right? It's just the way the illusion plays itself out, we interpret that mostly empty space as something solid. And we see something solid that feels solid and so on and so forth. What they're able to do is they're able to take basically half of the molecular matter and separate it from the other half, so they can physically, let's say, abduct you, and yet there will still be a physical body on the bed, right? So sometimes people could physically be abducted, and they're taken, and somebody could walk in the room and see them on the bed, but of course they won't wake up while the other half is gone, and they can make changes to the other half and then reintegrate it. And then those changes integrate with both halves. And he asked him, he was like, well, what happens if you don't integrate them? And it's like one of the other half will deteriorate very quickly. Let's say if you split an apple in half and you eat one half of the apple, the other half will just, very, very quickly deteriorate. Like, you've seen fruit deteriorate, it'll just very quickly deteriorate. So, but there's beings who can do all kind of things that to us seem mystical. But really, ironically, the Course really puts all that stuff in perspective, because really everything is really only one illusion. And the idea of different densities and dimensions is just one of the different variations, or one of the different forms that the illusion of separation takes. But really, everything is still thought. It's all one. It's just thought. What's that?
So have you had a chance to talk to these other entities you're coming in contact with about any?
Not in detail recently. I probably have, but I'm still just getting back into practicing. So a lot of my stuff is still sort of semi-conscious, which is why that was semi-conscious. I'm just starting to get back into practice. So the more I practice, the more conscious I get. But I plan to, man. At the least, I plan on getting on the craft and having a very conscious conversation, because in that experience, I was conscious enough to be there. I was conscious enough to remember and I was conscious enough to think. I was thinking, I plan on writing some books. I have some books coming out soon. I was gonna, maybe I should stay. I think I'll go ahead and go. I was making conscious decisions, right? I was able to see my nephew. I knew who he was. I was able to see. I was aware of what was going on, but still there was a certain level of. It was semi-conscious. It was still a bit of it. So I haven't. But after the crowd lifted off, I don't remember what happened. After the crowd lifted off, I don't remember anything. So I still have some work to do on myself. I've been out of practice for a long time. But the more you practice, the more conscious you get, and the more you can have conversations with them. So I plan on having conversations and asking some very hard questions. I plan on asking, how your craft, things that's a lot of people have a lot of light and fluffy stuff that's sort of just like philosophical, but that's one of the things that Adrian DeVille was able to do. He was able to ask some very, very scientific questions. So when you get his book, a lot of it I don't even understand yet, but I'm sure you give it to some kind of physicist, they can see he was able to ask some very hardcore questions. So that's what I really intend on doing. I really intend on, that's why I have this research study going. I want it to be more than just some airy-fairy thing. If these people really exist, which they do, and they're really coming here, which they do, and we can ask some real-world questions and have some data that's verifiable. So that's what it's really about. So whichever way I do it, man, I'm going to lift myself from the state that I'm in now, whether I reach enlightenment and I just wake up from the dream, or I get good enough with this ascension thing, not ascended masters enlightenment, but ascension where I could transverse dimensions, or I'm gonna align myself with a different planet, like. One of the things, but either way it goes, I'm gonna get to a progressed state, and one of my ways of doing that is starting to bring this stuff more to like this with video evidence and just and so you can count on it, man. I'm gonna have more videos. I'm gonna have more data. If you have some questions you want to ask, let me know, and you could be involved yourself. Like I said, we could do a flyby. And of course, that's depending on Lewis lives in a sort of, I guess, a more remote area, so, it wasn't such a big deal for them to fly out there, I guess, but, you're probably not going to do a flyby in the middle of New York, depending on what's going on.
I live out in the forest, so.
You shouldn't have a problem, and, so yeah, man, so yeah, I plan on doing more of that, and, I have another retreat planned for November, actually, because this experience happened a week before my retreat. And I was actually planning on having contact at my retreat, But like I said, different things could have happened where they couldn't come out while I was actually out there, but they came a week before. So I'm definitely going to have contact again and ask some real world questions and have some real world data going on. Yeah. And more video and stuff like that. Not to prove to people or anything, but just because it's just fun to do. And I can't really say I will, because like when I was on my retreat, I was so excited just to be out there. I didn't even bother bringing my camera. I brought some binoculars instead so I could see the craft a bit easier. So, who's to say, my friend just happened to have his cell phone with him and recorded it. So, but, for the people who join my research study, somebody's going to have a camera, so somebody's going to have some video of it. But it's not really even about that, because there's enough video out there to where anybody who wants to know, you can know. I mean, there's enough craft flying around where if anybody was interested, you could see one. I mean, you don't have to be some kind of person sitting on a mountain somewhere to see a craft. So it is really out there for anybody who wants to know. But I'm definitely going to bring it more into my personal life more, so I could be in a position to have a different life experience.
Yeah, I've been having quite a few dreams about being on crafts, and not really knowing what's going on, or just finding myself on the deck of a ship somewhere, looking out the window. But
good.
I mean,
I very likely that was an experience. Would you say?
Oh well, I'll have these dreams where I'm either on the ship or I'm on the ground observing a ship. And when I'm on the ship, I can see the people that are on there, yet I still can't have a conversation with them, or I really can't talk to them, or when the times that I do, I don't bring any of that information back. But there was one thing I brought back just a few days ago, or about a week ago now, and it was a word. And when I was waking up, I was saying this word, saying, "Don't forget this word. Don't forget this word. Bring this back with you." And I have no idea what it means. I googled it. I have no idea what it means. But it was this word or this phrase, and it was Wochecha. And I woke up saying, Wochecha, don't forget that, Wochecha. So the first thing I did when I woke up is, I wrote that down. And I have no idea what context it was in, but I feel like I was, on a ship or on something else, not physically on the planet in my dream state.
Sounds good, man. And that's when a lot of contact. The fact is, everybody's having contact, and the more that you become aware of this stuff, the more you remember it. So, of course, you can have a regular nocturnal dream of contact and stuff like that. But it sounds like it sounds like you're having some things that's clearly more than just a dream. Yeah,
and dreams have a whole different feeling to them. When I wake up from a dream that just your run of the mill dream. I have a different sense about it than when I wake up from one of these other experiences.
That's right. So that's awesome, man. It's good you remember that. And, of course, it's to be expected. Y'all into this stuff. So, that's awesome. So, and it'll start happening more and more to more people, I think. Not because, I know everybody's big on the X-wave thing. And like we were saying earlier, I'm sure the cosmology has an effect and all that stuff. But the fact is, if you don't change yourself, none of that really matters. Because there's timelines where Earth destroyed themselves, X-waves be damned. You know what I'm saying? So if you don't actually, so make sure that you do your practice. Don't wait for the X-wave to carry you.
Uh-huh.
Do your practices and do your efforts, and you'll find that the more you meditate and the more you pay attention like you're doing, and you'll start to remember more and more. You'll start to have experiences more and more, and so that's awesome. So good work, man.
It's coming along.
Elif, he's grown quite a bit here, and especially the last couple of years, he's really taken off. So I'm honored to be associated with him. Oh man! So Darryl, you're working on this book now, and we're expecting to see it at the end of the year, or?
Oh, no, yes, it'll be out by March of next year. It's completed. But I'm going through proofreading it, so I like to proofread it a few times. So I'm actually working on a second proofreading now, and after it's proofreaded, after I've proofread it enough to where it's cleaned up enough of any typos or whatever, then I'll put it out immediately. So it's already really everything is in place. So right now, at the latest, I'm anticipating March of next year. It's called Classes on the Course in Miracles, and it's basically 12 transcripts of classes that I've taught with various people, teaching those non-dualistic concepts. And it's just basically a discussion. A person might ask a question, I'll answer, and it'll be it's some good material. Of course, I'll think it's good material. It's not material, but when people see it's good material. So it'll be about 360 pages altogether of material.
Cool.
Okay,
cool.
Was that on purpose, the 360 pages?
No, it just ended up being what it was. I was actually
just a synchronicity.
Yeah, that's what it was. So it was originally going to be because I have 24 classes recorded, and I was going to just put them all out together, which would have been like 600 or 700 pages. So I decided to put 12 out now and 12 out later. So that's just what it's ended up being. Like right now, it's like, I believe it was 355, and then I'm going to, add some back matter to it or whatever. It's going to end up being about 360. So
nice.
Give or take. I'm still doing some proofreading, so it'll be around that amount.
Yeah.
So what else you got going on now?
I have the ET contact study. So if anybody wants to be involved in contact, and I have evidence that it's working. So you could join as well. Ideally, if anybody's in the Kentucky area, like a lady who joined recently, we'll go out and do physical contact retreats where we go out in the field. And but wherever you are in the world, you can still join and learn how to do it. And as they've demonstrated, like my friend is in Washington. So they was here and then they went to Washington. It don't matter where you are in the world, they can get there in a moment. And there's also, I still do the OBE course for anybody who's interested in learning how to enter altered states and things like that. And of course, it's integrated, like you were saying, with remembering contacts. It's all integrated because, again, there's really only one thing. So you can go to Amazon and get Travel for and learn how to meditate or read about my out-of-body experiences. And I still do the global meditation as well. I don't know how many people get involved, but another way that we could align ourselves and more greatly utilize this energy, this the thought of progression that we have that's symbolized by this X wave of energy is to meditate together. Like if you look at the Pleiadians, one of the things I learned about them is on their planet, when they started to come into their sort of enlightened phase of their society, they used their thoughts to heal their planet. Like they actually was able to meditate together as a globally and change the ecology of their planet and clean the air, because again, it's all thought. I saw a video not too long ago where I don't remember where it's at now, but there's this clinic where there's these highly advanced meditators, and like 3 or 4 of these meditators sat and meditated on this woman who had cancer, and they had her hooked up to this like sonogram type machine, and you could actually see the cancer dissolving in real time while they're meditating. So our thoughts definitely have an effect as the world plays out. As it plays out in the world, we have an effect. So if you want to get together on Sundays at 7 a.m. and we can meditate together for global peace and for oneness and all that good stuff that we want the world to be. So and what else? And there's also the advanced OBE research study, which I don't expect a lot of people to be able to join. You have to actually be able to go out of body. But we've had several good experiences already of getting out of body and meeting each other and having telepathic contact. And I plan on progressing that more and more. We're going to pick up really hard again in November and December. And the idea of that research study is to meet, confirm it, go to different places and confirm it. And eventually we're going to do things like go to Mars, go to Saturn. We've already been to the moon, and just verify things and collaborate and start to get a better picture of what's going on in the moon in these different places. Something like what Ed Dames and these guys do, and Courtney Brown, what they do at remote viewing. But imagine doing that with outer body explorers. Imagine having a team of outer body explorers that all separately go to a location and confirm what's there and see what's there, and having all of these reports confirming it. I mean, imagine going through time. There's all kind of stuff. So I have that in the works right now. So several things, man. Having a lot of fun. And all of that stuff will be published as well. Like I'm working on a few other books on the out of body state, and as I start to practice again. And also I'll put this data that we collect from our, we've already had just in the sort of wave that we went through a month or two ago. We had like 10 confirmations. But me and my, we've been out of practice for a while, so we're still building up. But you're going to see some very, very, and of course you can't convince a skeptic of anything, of course,
Right.
But you're going to, people who's open-minded, you're going to see some really, really unrefutable confirmations out of body, so some good stuff. All of that stuff going on. And I have it set, by the way, if you get Travel Far on Amazon, you can get the Kindle book free. So the people who like the Kindle, you can get the paperback and have both of them. So I'm getting a lot of good feedback from that as well. So a lot of people are enjoying it.
Oh, fantastic. So it's DarrylBerry.com. And
Darryl Berry Jr.
DarrylBerryJr.com. Yes, geez, I forgot the junior. Oh, man. Yeah, we just love having you on the show, Darryl.
I love being here. Thanks for having me back, and I hope to be back again.
Oh, man. Oh, you will be. You will be. No doubt about it.
For sure.
Yeah, we just nudge you in one direction, and off you go. You get plugged in, and this stuff just flows from you, and we definitely greatly appreciate it. And I'm sure all our listeners out there. We're going to start doing one show a month that we don't put any barriers up to the second hour. And we selected this show for this month. So we're going to put this out there, and with the whole thing will be out there on YouTube and everywhere that, we post this stuff at. And
awesome.
So, yeah, good stuff. And man, I thank everybody for listening.
Yeah.
And we really, we're in a state of constant grace doing this radio show, and gratitude and all of those things, just for the opportunity and the ability to be able to do it ourselves.
Yeah. And I know for me, it's like, every show we do, it's, it's something that I need to hear right now. I wasn't sure where this conversation was going to go tonight, but everything that we talked about was things that, I needed, clarification on right now.
Awesome.
So, I'm so grateful to be able to sit here and listen to you, Darryl, and to you, Tom, and to everybody else that we've talked to. It's such a great experience.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, and thank you for everybody who's listening, and I hope that you all are sharing this experience too.
All right, guys, if you're out there listening on one of the other media formats and you want to check out some of the other shows that we've done, we've got 6 years worth of archives over there at www.the100thmonkeyradio.com. And we would be very happy and pleased to see you pop on over there and check us out. So, all right, DarrylBerryJr.com, and we will see you guys next week. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance.
Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change.
Namaste, my friend.
Decide to running high to change my ways. Well, I've made my decision. I'm a man on a mission of loving you. Man on a mission. Man on a mission. Man on a mission. Man on a mission. Given my condition, what can I do? I do.